Hey everybody, it's Nick Sorrentino Against Crony Capitalism. Thank you for joining me today, March 5th, 2025. This is the Against Crony Capitalism podcast. So today we're going to talk a little bit about Trump's speech. We're going to talk a little bit about Ukraine. I will talk some about NATO expansion in Eastern Europe. We're going to talk about the Trump change, whatever it is, the change in society, the change in culture that has happened over the past few months. We're going to talk a little bit about the Pentagon and the waste there. We're going to talk a little bit about the people who don't seem to want to know about the waste and are perfectly okay with being stolen from by their government. And then we're going to talk a little bit about Jeff Bezos and the direction of the editorial page at the Washington Post, which is very interesting. Post we did elicited a massive reaction. So, first, Trump's speech. It looks like it's generally well received by the United States, by the citizenry of the United States. There was a poll came out this morning from CBS. Actually, it might have been last night, right after the speech, that showed that 76% of voters, I think it's 76, of watchers, watchers of the speech approved of it. Now, we posted this poll to Against Crony Capitalism at Facebook, and a number of our readers and viewers made the point that this poll is biased in the sense that the people who are likely watching the speech are probably Trump supporters. That is definitely true. But I will say that this type of poll happens every time the president gives a speech like this, and I don't remember one being so lopsided in favor of the president, with the exception of possibly after September 11th. That might have been more lopsided, but even then, maybe not. We've never really seen anything like what we saw with the polling from CBS this morning. Anyway. As one might expect, there were disruptions. Congressman Al Green decided to stand up and make a spectacle of himself with his cane, yelling something about cutting Medicare and how Trump doesn't have the mandate to cut Medicare and Medicaid. But it definitely felt like a cooked talking point. It was obviously super staged. I mean, I love the paddles, by the way, from the Democrats. I mean, I have to say that right now, I have never seen either one of the parties, or the big parties, the Republican Party or the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party right now looks totally toothless. It looks leaderless. It looks just in shambles. It looks directionless. And I mean, so, a point was made by a pundit. I made this point in another video, that how did the Democrats turn everything around? Well, this pundit made the point that maybe what the Democrats need is really kind of like a Democrat Trump, who comes in and really just embarrasses the establishment and calls them out and shows the corruption and just, levels with the American people. I actually think that could be a way for the Democrats to move forward. But who that person would be, you've got me. I have no idea. I mean, who's going to do that? Gavin Newsom? It's like these people are all totally bought and sold in the system, or Gretchen Whitmer up in Michigan. Is she going to do it? Is she going to keep it real? No. Anyway, so, generally speaking, it looks like Trump's momentum continues. Now, some of this momentum, Vladimir Zelensky sought to blunt some of this momentum, but he failed massively and really very publicly. And he came into the White House and essentially threw a fit. He was ungrateful. He was obstinate, and he embarrassed himself, and he hurt his country. Trump is right when he says that Zelensky, you don't have the cards, and that Zelensky should know that we are his patrons. Okay, we are the reason why he more than anyone, he should know this, that the only reason he has any power at all is because the establishment in this country, along with the folks in the EU and in NATO, have backed him. And I think that the reason why he took the attitude that he did is he was probably listening to the folks in Europe who still despise Trump, and basically he thought that he was going to come off as some kind of a hero or something instead of looking absolutely ridiculous, which he did. Now, I think Trump was right for tossing him out on his keister. And it looks like Zelensky's trying to find a way back into the fold. Now, we need this war to end. We need it to end tomorrow. Now, this is going to be complicated, but what it seems to me is that the Donbass ends up going to Russia, which is that sliver along the east there. It's dominated by ethnic Russians. Generally, the folks are inclined in that direction anyway. It would be a nightmare for Ukraine to try to suppress the sentiment in that area. I mean, why would you want to deal with them anyway? It's not like Ukraine's borders haven't changed a million times in the past. I mean, they could change again. And the other part is is the Crimean Peninsula. Crimean Peninsula really is a non-starter. It is in 1954, Khrushchev actually transferred the Ukraine administratively from the Russian or from Russia to Ukraine. Khrushchev actually was born on the border, technically in Russia, but grew up in Ukraine. And Kiev is kind of like, not Kiev. The Crimea is kind of like as close to a Riviera as the Soviet Union had, and so planning it administratively within Ukraine was kind of a Anyway, you kind of wonder what the politics were behind Khrushchev making that move. But anyway, the point is, it was Russia, and it is dominated by ethnic Russians. Now, it is worth noting that Stalin chased out all the people who are actually natively from there, and those are the Tatar people. And that was a horrific, essentially, ethnic cleansing, and that needs to be noted. But right now, the Crimean Peninsula is dominated by Russians. It is generally inclined towards Russia, and the Black Sea Fleet is stationed there. And it's not like Russia has the choice of just saying, "Oh, okay, Black Sea Fleet in our base, no big deal." They don't. They can't give it up. So that's probably going to have to go to Russia. Now, Ukraine needs security guarantees, and I think we should help them in that regard. And I think that's where the administration is headed. I think the idea that we're trading minerals for a lot of the aid that went to Ukraine, I think is not a bad idea. I think strengthening ties with Ukraine, economically speaking, is good probably for us and for the Ukraine. It's a good way to kind of keep an eye on Putin and whatever. But Ukraine should not be part of NATO. That's what really kind of sparked this whole fight. It wasn't just some random, Putin didn't just randomly move, as John Mearsheimer has he's made the point. In some ways, you could argue that his move into Ukraine was a rational one, kind of like his move into Georgia when we threatened to bring Georgia into the fold, into the NATO fold. And, and that is not discussed enough. Unfortunately, in this country, we think Ukraine good, Russia bad. Okay. Generally speaking, probably generally true. Okay. Russia did invade Ukraine. Putin is a dictator. But Zelensky leaves a lot to be desired too, and we don't hear much about that in this country. banning opposition parties, suspending elections, that sort of thing. Not to mention the fact that a lot of people, Ukraine was considered, I think it was the second most corrupt country in the world at some point, or something like that. Maybe it was the third or fourth, or something like this. But it's massively corrupted. That hasn't changed, except now that there's a bunch of U.S. taxpayer money and weapons over in Ukraine. So I promise you, the connected people in Ukraine, the last thing they want to see is the United States back out, for just about a million reasons. But a big one is because it'll impact their pocketbooks. All right. Now, on the Trump change, okay? Now, in the speech, he referred to the common sense revolution, which I think is not a bad term. And it sort of reflects where the country is at. I mean, it is. It did seem like for many, many years, we went down this route where it was like common sense just took leave. Like, just, it just, a group of people who had worked very hard to get into the positions of power in government, in academia, and in corporations, tried to institute kind of this really social Marxist, I hate the term paradigm, but paradigm, this worldview that this is I mean, you guys remember? It was only a few months ago. I mean, DEI and merit was tossed out the window. It was just crazy. And now that we look back on it, it's like it's hard to believe we ever went there, but we did. And really, had Kamala won, we would have been so screwed. We would have been so screwed because all of those people, those consultants, imposing, the pronoun stuff and a million different other things, they would have been empowered. And thank God, thank you, Lord, thank you, American people, for there are a lot of things to be desired with Trump. Okay, and we've discussed them here many times, and we'll discuss many, many more. By the way, the tariffs going to be a big problem, going to be a challenge. We'll see how that goes, but thankfully, that whole period of time in this country that really built out of Obamaism. Actually, it goes. Obama is a symptom of that general movement that really, in some ways, came out of the 60s, and before that, going back even to the 40s and 30s. But anyway, that wave broke. And in many ways, the Trump election broke it. And say what you want about Trump, the change is refreshing. It seems like grown-ups are in charge again. And I know that for a number of our friends on the left, the idea that the grown-ups are in charge is anathema to their worldview. But I mean, it sure feels like that to me, and I think to a lot of America. Now, so what is it? Is it a common sense revolution? Okay, maybe. Is it a counter revolution? Well, some have. Victor Davis Hanson makes the case that it's a counter revolution, and I don't know that is exactly correct either. Another possibility is that it's a restoration, which is closely tied to a counter revolution, and but it implies a restoration of constitutional values, common sense, sort of just up is up and down is down again, and maybe that's what it is too. We haven't decided yet, and we'd love to get your take on what it is, what the change is, what the Trump change is. Anyway. In this change, we've seen Doge, and there is, frankly, we've watched it with glee. It is something I never thought that I would see the bureaucracy attacked head on like this ever. It is. It's like the Berlin Wall falling down. I never thought the Berlin Wall was going to fall down. I grew up, like thinking that the Soviet Union was this monolith that would always be there and would always haunt us. But then it fell. And that's sort of how Trump and Doge sort of feels. Now, when the Berlin Wall fell, there were a lot of people on the other side who freaked out. Let's remember that. I mean, people in the Soviet Union, people in the Communist Party in Eastern Europe, those were not, that was not a good time for them. And what you're seeing with Doge and kind of the Trump change, whatever it is that is a similar type of a group of people who have done well under the old regime, but now see it disintegrating in front of their face. And not only that, the system that they benefited from is being exposed as fraudulent and immoral. And that is hard to come to terms with. That hurts deep, and it's a tough thing. And if you look at what some of the folks who eventually did come around, the old Soviets who came around and realized, how much a change was needed and how immoral their state was. It's interesting. It took years and years for a lot of these people, and some people never made it. And that's what I sense is going to be the case with a lot of these people with regard to Doge, and just the general change in the country and, change in what government even means. Now, we're getting ahead of ourselves a little bit. We're only 40 days in. But things have changed. I mean, there's no doubt about that. And how those people deal with it will be interesting to watch. They would be wise to go with the flow and reflect, as opposed to digging their heels in and being upset, because the world that predated kind of this change really was largely artificial. And I think that a lot of folks who benefited from the old regime, and I mean regime in the, broad sense. I mean societal, like everything. I think fundamentally they knew it was fraudulent too. But coming to terms with that is not easy. That brings me to the apologists for the state. It is very interesting to see all these people freaking out over Musk. They're like, "Oh, Musk got a $400 million contract." Okay, now let me preface this by saying there used to be that everyone on the left loved Musk. Okay, and we called him the world's most likable big-time crony capitalist for a long time. I mean, like over a decade we've been writing about him. Okay, we've written about the Tesla deals with California. I mean, SpaceX. Sun City, the whole bit, okay, or Solar City, whatever it is, and then somewhere along the way, and some people think it had something to do with his son, who became trans or something. Like something went off in his head, and he woke up, okay, and he did the world a massive favor by buying X, and really putting a spotlight on what. The broad censorship, which sadly in this country was state sponsored. I mean, it was coming from the White House, and it's been laundered through the European Union and all sorts of stuff. It's a very complicated thing. We encourage you to check out Mike Benz, by the way, if you want to learn more about that. The guy's a super genius on this topic. Check out his stuff. We'll put some links in the below this video in the letter. Anyway, it strikes us like these people. There's a whole group of people that seem to not care that the taxpayer has been stolen from, and that money is being massively misused, and that some people are getting rich on their backs. And as we said at the top of the video, it seems to us that either one is in on the gig or in on the whole scheme. Okay, the taxpayers are funding them for however, as employees or through programs or whatever, or one is afraid, and it's probably, in a lot of cases, probably both, that, perhaps one has done some things that are, maybe they don't want Doge looking at. Like, for instance, Schiff, like he's talking about how, like Doge is going through your stuff. Okay, Doge, as it was pointed out, is going through his stuff, and that's what he's afraid of. Why is he so concerned? I don't think most Americans are concerned in the slightest. I think most people, especially taxpayers, people who are net taxpayers who pay out, are probably pretty damn pleased with Doge to date. So anyway, lastly, I want to finish up with Jeff Bezos' statement. And I said, he owns the Washington Post, and the Washington Post has long been a, kind of a, an establishmentarian piece. I mean, it is Washington's newspaper. It has always been pretty far left of center, very pro-state. It's also tied in with the whole state establishment. It's like, there's the New York Times, and then there's the Washington Post. Stories are leaked from the state through Washington Post. It's a whole thing. And for Jeff Bezos, the owner, to say that the editorial page direction of the Washington Post is going, he said, we're going to be writing every day in support and defense of two pillars, personal liberties and free markets. Okay, this is not a radical thing. It's like he's saying, we're going to be writing in support of the things that make America, America. Yet, there has been this visceral response from a whole group of people who apparently are not for liberty, personal liberties, and definitely not for free markets. It is insane. It's like, how can you be against these things? I do understand, like, there are a lot of people. I was once an idealistic young college political science student reading Marx, okay? I can understand how some people have a problem with free markets, as unfortunately a lot of people really don't know what free markets are. Essentially, free markets, by the way, emerge everywhere. They are as natural as gravity, okay? You can plan an economy out any which way you want. Markets are going to emerge, all right? And that's just a fact. But anyway, and markets should generally be free so that people can engage in them and gain the most value from them. But anyway, I'm not going to get into that. The point is, generally, they're good things. They are good things. Free societies have free markets, okay? Yet there's a whole group of people who are out of their minds because this is going to be the general disposition of the editorial department, as if the editorial department of the New York Times, the Washington Post, the LA Times, all of these big newspapers, CNN, MSNBC, all of them have been radically to the left and statist for decades. And they're upset about this. It's just silly. Anyway, on that point, we're gonna leave it. Oh, by the way, thanks to everyone. Again, I appreciate your support. We're really on the edge of moving into kind of a whole nother level, and your support has been all about that. So we look forward to seeing you soon.